Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special council meeting of Tuesday, October 29th. We're going to hear for some budget presentations from some of our boards and agencies and a few community groups. I'll call the meeting to order. I got a amendment to the adoption of the agenda so that the procedural bylaw be waived to allow the addition of report CORP 219-027 to today's agenda as a time-sensitive matter, and that the agenda for the open session of the special council meeting of Tuesday, October 29th, 2019 be adopted as circulated, and with the following amendment: the addition of report item 6.1, report Corp 219-027, development charge reserve debenture, from Leanne Mitchell, our cost accounting supervisor. I get a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Helmsley and Dunn, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on today's open agenda? Seeing none, we'll move right into deputations and presentations. Our first presentation is from the Kawartha Lakes Police Services Board, 2020 proposed budget. Mark Mitchell, the Chief of Police, is here, and Don Thomas, the Chair of the Police Service Board. Welcome, gentlemen. Should be a little button there. Perfect.
Our process is somewhat unique in the fact that most police services or chiefs develop the budget, bring it to the board for approval, and then it comes on to the council, where at City of Kawartha Lakes, the whole police services board meets with the chief and his management team. We go over the entire budget, and as a result, we're fairly well knowledgeable on the budget, and we have that great understanding, and as a result, we can support it. In keeping with the direction of the city, we endeavored to keep our 2020 estimates the same as 2019, despite that the officers are receiving a 1.5% increase in wages this year. We also thank the mayor and the city for the contribution from the Cannabis Reserve Fund. And the good news is that our budget estimate, as you can see, almost, they cut the good news off the bottom of that, but the good news is that our budget is 0.03% increase over 2019. Now, with every good news story, there's a bad news story. We have 3 officers that work full-time at the Central East Correctional Center. Since that super jail opened in 2003, those officers have been, that program has been fully funded, 100% for wages, benefits, and equipment. On October the 2nd, Chief Mitchell received a correspondence from the ministry indicating that they were going to decommission the police liaison officer program. So what that means for us is that we still have to do the job, but we don't have any government funding for that. Now, last year, these 3 officers handled about 1,234 occurrences, and they're up over 900 for this year. So the decision to decommission that program was made without any input from the stakeholders. At any one time, the population at the Central East is comprised of between 5 and 7% of the inmates who declare the City of Kawartha Lakes as their residence. So it appears that the government's looking for the taxpayers of the city to cover 100% of the work from that provincial institution. So where we stand right now is that Chief Mitchell, Chief Tanner from Halton Region, who has the Maplehurst, 1,800-bed Maplehurst Institution, and a representative from the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police are awaiting a meeting with the ministry to see if they'll reconsider that decision that they've made as far as the funding for those officers. So for now, our budget is business is a go, and our budget is basically at 0%. Questions?
Thank you. Councillor Helmsley, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did you want a motion to receive as well?
Yeah, I'll ask for a motion to receive and refer to the budget process, if you'll move
Absolutely.
that. Seconded
And
by Councillor Yeo. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, moving back to the super jail, if we're no longer being funded for it. Is it possible that we would reduce the number of officers in the force by 3? My understanding is that we would need permission from the province in order to reduce the number of officers in the Lindsay Ops Police. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. And both Chief Mitchell and I will likely take a stab at some of the questions. Section 40 of the Police Services Act says that if you're going to reduce the number of officers that you have, you must have a hearing. And most of the hearings are based on a reduction in service or a reduction in the geographical area that is currently policed. Under these circumstances, we don't have any reduction in occurrences. We are still look to fill that gap.
Thank you. Additionally, then, if we were to tell the province, it's your jail, have the OPP do it, and of course, we get billed by the OPP for the rest of the city of Kawartha Lakes, so it would be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but what would entail moving that responsibility to the provincial police?
So that would require some negotiations between us and the province. I don't think it's as simple as us saying we're not going to do that, because at the end of the day, the jail does fall within our policing jurisdiction, and we are legislatively required to investigate criminal offenses, fulfill our obligations under the Coroner's Act and other legislation. But that is certainly a negotiation that could take place. At this point, my focus, as Chair Thomas has indicated, is on getting that decision revisited and the funding restored.
Thank you. What kind of money are we talking about for those 3 officers? Just ballpark, if you
Our
could.
budgeted, our expected resources this year were for 2020 were $443,000, or about 5.2 or 3% of our budget.
443, thank you. And as you say, it wouldn't be an easy thing just to, the OPP to take it over.
Correct.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I certainly sympathize with the issue. So what my question is as far as reduction of service, I'm going to assume that Monday to Friday they get pretty quick service. Or is there any possibility on allowing these complaints to stack up so we actually do reduce service, or the time, same amount of service, just not as timely as what CEC's grown accustomed to?
Thank you. Yes, so the current practice is that the members work Monday to Friday, but one of the members assigned to the institutional unit is on call 24 hours a day. And you're quite right that the majority of incidents could wait and be picked up, or a member could attend as needed when calls permit. But there are certain cases that would require an immediate response, and we would still have to fulfill those obligations.
Yeah, and I unfortunately don't know enough about jail policing, but with my contacts, I'm assuming that, and this is an assumption on my part, that in the case of an incident, normally assaults, they're going to be segregated almost immediately by CECC and allow an investigation to take place after. I don't envy your position, and good luck.
Any further questions?
One of the other
Besides-
things in regards to that workload is inquests. There's currently 8 potential inquests, and as you likely are aware, the Coroner's Act says that you'll supply the coroner's constable and you'll supply a full-time investigator, and they can't be the same person. So there's a lot of work involved just in those 8 incidents that, yeah, we'll have to figure it out.
Court officer couldn't do the coroner's constable duties?
I doubt it.
The Act says a coroner's constable, so.
Well, we've got some options. So first option is obviously try to get it restored and have a bit of consultation, and hopefully that works out. If not, we'll deal with it as we have some options moving forward. No further questions. We have a motion to receive and refer to the budget process. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your coming in and sharing that with us. Thank you. Item 5.2 is the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, the 2020 proposed budget. Mr. Mike Walters, CAO, welcome, sir. I'll just get you to put that mic on if you would.
There we go.
You got it.
Sorry, technically challenged this morning. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, staff, members of the audience. It's my pleasure to be here to present the budget for 2020. I did bring along copies of our 2019 budget companion document. This outlines everything that was proposed to be done this year, and it gives a full listing of programs and services, and I'll be referring to some of the outcomes that we proposed in the 19 document. So I don't know, is there a way I can give these? So we've tried to keep within the envelope that was provided, and I think we've achieved that, hopefully. Just as a way of background, this is our 68th year conserving and restoring Lake Simcoe. Our watershed is 3,400 square kilometers. It spans 20 municipalities. The lake is 722 square kilometers by itself. Our jurisdiction covers all of the watershed with the exception of Orillia. We are meeting with Orillia this year to once again see if they would like to join the authority. But they're currently not a member officially. We do work on a fee-for-service basis on occasion for the municipality, but that is at 100% cost recovery. We have an 18 board member, 4-year cycle from 9 member municipalities, and we are in the fastest growing areas in Ontario. Our growth is phenomenal in the southern half of the watershed, as you're probably aware. We're following our strategic plan. Essentially, our vision is a thriving environment that inspires and sustains us for future generations. Our mission is to work with our community to protect and restore Lake Simcoe by leading research, policy, and action. And we've got a continued purpose. There's 4 main key areas within the strategic plan, and you're going to see that all the activities we undertake fall within one of these 4 major areas. I won't go through them in the purposes of time. So just to go through some of our accomplishments for 2019, we're updating our emergency mapping system, and what's exciting about that is it's also, because it's a 3-dimensional digital model, it's providing us opportunities to identify areas for flood relief. And what that means is we can actually undertake works to reduce flooding and take people out of harm's way. A big project being conducted right now in the town of Uxbridge in the downtown core, and essentially takes about 166 structures out of the floodplain. A lot of people that were living in there, and it allows for the redevelopment of the downtown. These are the type of projects that we're going to be able to bring to council's attention in the future. We've already identified a number within the southern port, and we're just starting to look at opportunities in the north. So, enhanced tracking of environmental trends restoration efforts through our key performance indicator website. Because we have specific targets, we are reporting on key performance indicators. One of those things, obviously, is phosphorus. Lake Simcoe has an abundance of it, so we've been monitoring phosphorus for the last 28 years in partnership with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. We also have been targeting winter salt management, and this is something that will benefit all municipalities, hopefully. We have a freshwater roundtable. It's made up of individuals from different groups of private sector, public sector, Gallings, for example, legal firm is providing in-kind support. We have World Wildlife Federation, we have McDonald's, we have a bunch of property management people, Brookfield, for example. We're looking at salt management differently than just saying we need to do salt management plans, and we're looking at the approach towards trying to reduce salt through a series of best management practices that, if they're followed, would indemnify the person who is doing the actual spreading and the landowner. And that's really the only way we see that salt's going to be reduced in any meaningful fashion. So the idea is you put on what is required under the best management practices, you document that, and then we're looking at legislation through the province to indemnify those landowners and the applicator from any trip, slip, and fall lawsuits. We've already gone out, there's a document, a discussion paper that's been produced. It's going to our board of directors for approval next Friday. We've had some preliminary discussions with the Attorney General and the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks. They've been very good. So we're hoping to move this forward sometime in the new year. We've completed over almost 100 projects. One of the biggest ones was the East Holland tributary fish berry removal. It was essentially an old dam structure that had reduced fish passage, and that opened up more than 16 kilometers of stream for cold water fish. So we're seeing improved biomass. That was in the town of Aurora. We also are completing our asset management plan. We actually were able to work with the region of York to get some Federation of Canadian Municipality funding to do so. And we're just in the final throes of trying to get a strategy in place, and it'll be going to our December board for approval. We've also completed, in partnership with the province, a watershed scale climate change adaptation strategy, and that's something I'll be coming back to council to talk about. We have our own mitigation plan within our authority where we're reducing our carbon footprint by more than 30% by 2026. This is more the adaptation side of the business. This is more about what can we do to affect municipal infrastructure to make it more resilient to climate change. So low impact development, but also looking at other ways and means of engineering some fixes within our urban fabric to stop flooding from these really severe, significant events that are occurring. And that goes hand in hand with some of the work we've been doing with the emergency management system. It's been able to identify some of those opportunities as well. And almost done, substantially completed our Skyline Creek Operations Center. We were doing a restoration. Have to thank council for your investment. The actual renovation won't be done until the new year, be in the first quarter of the new year. Our effective date is February, and that's going to relieve the problem we have with office space currently. We have staff that are working on top of other staff, so we're renting space as well, and it's very costly. This was an old facility that was an education facility that had been mothballed. We were able to renovate it, and now we're putting our staff in, and it's been a very cost-effective way to provide space for our growing staff. I wanted to talk a bit about some of the challenges with Bill 108. We've been in and met with the minister. Right now they're doing a round of pre-consultation with conservation authorities. We were the second authority through the door. I know Kawartha, if they haven't done it, are going to be doing it soon. There's some things that I wanted to mention. We will be working with all our member municipalities on the core and non-core, but right now there's a transition period that the minister has allotted for the I guess, informed decision-making on how we best move forward. And that hasn't really been defined yet. We're thinking it probably won't be until next year, so that's why we've come forward with a budget as usual for this year. There is funding, approval, and logistic implications associated with that. So, for example, if a program, municipalities will be able to choose and pick and choose which programs they want, which are non-core. That could have implications on some of the programs, and we can talk about that at the time when the budget's submitted. And then we're always seeking improved transparency. So the province did reduce our funding for the water risk management by $65,000. We were able to offset that by using some of our reserves, and we've tried to work that into our budget for 2020. So there is no additional ask for any of the provincial cuts that have been made to date. So partnering together, as I mentioned, the emergency management system, we will be contacting staff in the future. There are some opportunities, although limited up here, but certainly the new mapping. It's much improved over some of the work we've done. So there'll be a lot of public consultation over how lines are changing on maps, especially when they relate to things like official plans and designated growth areas. So in general, they're shrinking. They're not growing. So that's good news. We continue to work with our municipalities doing urban stormwater. Stormwater ponds are pretty much a thing of the past, but we are working on design and maintenance of the ones that are left with respect to how they can best be retrofitted or maintained into the future. And it's a significant cost to our municipal partners. We have over 400 stormwater ponds within our watershed. The cost to maintain those 400 ponds at current estimate is in excess of $40 million. That assumes the material is not contaminated, and that can more than double if the material is contaminated. So, We are working on a natural heritage forestry project. We've done a number of new restoration works through our offsetting program. The Mullock Nature Reserve was just one example, but we've also created prairie lands in 2 properties and reconstructed a wetland on another property. So lots of work going on. And then leveraging our municipal expertise. We work as best as possible with our municipal partners already so that if we don't have an expertise, we're actually sharing expertise with some of our municipalities. So we find that extremely beneficial for both parties because we learn a lot from each other. And obviously, the things like diversity and inclusion in our records management is something we've been able to work with our municipal partners to leverage their expertise. So engaging our partners, I've provided you the budget companion. Once our board has approved this budget for this year, a similar document will be created and sent out for all of our municipalities. We don't normally print the document. We did this year simply because of the provincial change, and the province did want to see some transparency, and it's a great document to take out and show the minister. It is available on our website as well, and in the future we'll produce a certain number of copies to keep costs down and provide them to each municipality. We're doing semi-annual updates. I was remiss, I couldn't get up here this year. Usually I do 2 presentations to council, not which are budget. So we will be up in the new year to talk about the EMS. And we'll be talking about also, we develop working priorities every year, our annual operating priorities, which are the activities that we'll be undertaking and how they can influence and hopefully provide value to our municipal partners. We are going to be doing a CAO roundtable in the end of November, which we do every year. And we're piloting, this year we did we had an update meeting just with finance staff to talk about some of the challenges, especially around the changes with the Bill 108. That's going to continue. It was very successful. So again, your staff will be contacted to come. And part of that will be looking at the transitioning policies, as well as the service level agreement that will be a requirement if you are willing to fund any of the non-core activities moving forward under Bill 108. Our focus for next year will be to complete our strategic plan. We're almost there. We only have one outstanding task that had not been started, and we've got to the end of next year to complete it, and that was the engagement strategy, and that was financially a problem. We're going to be undertaking it through drawing monies from reserve. We are doing an operational review of all our programs and services, so every 4 years within our strategic plan, we have to do that. It's not as a result of the government review. This was something we do anyhow to ensure that our programs are relevant, that our municipalities are getting good value for the investment that they're making. So I'll be, again, coming back with the results of the program and service review in the new year. We are looking to try to address financial pressures, so we had a lot of consultation with our municipalities. We have a status quo budget. There's no new full-time equivalents or staff within this. We did have a strategic initiative that was adding 1% to the budget, which we've pulled. That was the engagement strategy, which we're going to draw from reserve. And we're trying to accommodate wherever possible all the fundraising funding targets that we've been getting from our municipal partners. So in respecting the taxpayer, the engagement, as I mentioned, is reserve funded. We're finding offsets internally to the $65,000 loss of MNRF funding. So we've been able to find some efficiencies. It's mostly through cuts. We're already a pretty bare bones organization with respect to what we can provide, and we've found most efficiencies already. So whenever there's a reduction, it means a reduction in service. It's not in the area of water risk management, though. So reasonable economic adjustments. We are still going through some economic adjustments for some existing staff. We had a 1% to 2% add for cost of inflation, and that was dependent upon what was applicable at the time. I think the board had approved a 2% increase as part of the budget assumptions, but that has, I think, been pared back a bit with respect to what we're finding. So overall, our budget's around $21 million total investment. The City of Kawartha Lakes is around $40,000 of that. We are able to leverage money from, obviously, our other municipal partners, but from the province through the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. We've been very successful at applying for money through the federal government for National Disaster Mitigation Program funding or infrastructure funding where it's possible. Our foundation has done a great job. They've raised almost $750,000 already this year. They'll probably exceed their target. So overall, all that money goes in, and we're able to partner. And while our total investment is $21 million within the authority, when you look at the work that gets done and the value added from other partners, it's almost a 2-to-1 investment. So here's our budget for 2020. The total cost to the municipality would be $38,453. It's actually gone down just a little more than $600. Biggest portion of that was some of the change in the CVA, which there's been growth in York Region, which is offsetting some of the cost within the city of Kawartha Lakes. The other thing were some of the cuts and changes that I had mentioned earlier, the 1% rollback plus absorbing some of the losses from the provincial funding. Here's a breakdown based on the essentially service areas, and I can provide more detail should council wish it on any of these. Essentially shows the different programs and services, and they are outlined in the document that I've handed out. So if you want more detail, you can actually look at the document as well. So looking ahead, our board hopefully will finalize our budget sometime in the first quarter of next year. We're still doing budget presentations. There's quite a few scheduled into the new year. The implications of Bill 108 are still trying to be understood, but we do understand that this coming year was a transition year, which was great. We'll probably be looking at anywhere between 21 to 22 to actually start implementing some of the major changes within Bill 108. Depending on where the province lands. And we are going to be starting to develop a new strategic plan. That's partly why we're undertaking the program and service review internally as well. But we will be coming out to our municipal partners, as we always have, to collaborate on the development of the plan, to see what is it we're doing well, what you would like to see us do if we're not doing it, how we can do things better. So that will be in the next year as well. So unfortunately, you're going to see a bit more of me next year than you have this year. So, and that's it in a nutshell. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Walters. I'll get a motion to receive and refer to the budget process. Councillor Yeo, you'll move that. Councillor Riley, you'll second it. You had a question, Councillor Riley?
Yes, thanks very much, and thanks for coming and make a presentation today. You mentioned the city of Orillia isn't in your catchment area. So when they have a number of subdivisions, everything in the city of Orillia, who comments on that?
So through your worship, in some instances, we do comment on some of their plans of subdivision, and when we do so, actually, the developer has to pay a fee for us. It's mostly for stormwater management. They've actually been referred to us by the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks on a number of cases. They're in the catchment, but they're not an actual funding member. And this has been the case for a long time. So the chair and myself will be, which the chair of the authority right now is Chairman Wayne Emerson from Region of York. We will be traveling up to City of Orillia sometime, I think the deputation's in late November, to provide a presentation on our programs and services, and once again ask them to join. We have provided them floodplain mapping for the city. That was funded entirely by the province, and whether or not they're adhering to that, though, we do not know. So we do not provide any of our programs and services unless they're paid for directly by the city, because that would be a burden on, obviously, all the other partners who are paying for our services.
So just so I understand it, like not every severance or not every building permit or not every subdivision is commented on in Orillia by the Conservation Authority?
Through your worship, not at all, no.
Okay.
So only those that are provided by the municipality.
And just a second to you, Mr. Mayor. You had a very large project for a number of years with the phosphorus loading in Lake Simcoe. I don't see any, is it complete, or is there any update or on that?
Through your worship, I wish it was complete. It's not. The bottom waters of the target was based on cold water fish reproduction, and it was based on an interim target that we had picked of 75 metric tons. The province picked 44. I don't think we'll ever achieve the 44 metric tons. It's very close to pre-settlement load, so that means before there was any habitation, European settlement within the basin. We have got the loads down, but they are starting to creep back up, and the cause of that is climate change. We're seeing a lot more rainfall, especially in the winter. We're seeing rainfall on frozen ground, which is washing all sorts of dirt and debris into the rivers. So our loads have creeped up seasonality within the winter, where before we would see frozen ground, solid snow, and one freshet where you'd have one melt. We're seeing multiple melts, and that's causing all sorts of havoc within the watershed. So the loads have increased. With that said, we've had amazing growth, and we've been able to essentially reduce the impacts associated with that new growth on phosphorus going in. So the actual reduction in phosphorus, we were at around 75. We're back up to around 85, but our actual reduction is greater than 20 tons. So we are going to continue to work with our municipal partners, and a large part of that will be the stormwater retrofit work that we're doing now. And that's being funded through the offset program, which is funded through the development industry. And they're willing partners in that program. So.
Thank you. No further questions. We look forward to seeing you next year. And please thank your board for working to meet our budget requirement. Much appreciated.
And if I could, Your Worship, I just wanted to thank our member, Councillor Emmett Yeo, because he's been fantastic. He's attended all of our meetings, and he's always very productive. So thank
Really? He goes to all your meetings? Really?
you. Yep. I'm sorry if I got you in trouble.
Yeah, good to know. We have a motion to receive and refer. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you again for coming. Appreciate it. Item 5.3 is Kawartha Conservation, our 2020 proposed budget. Mark Mahowski, CAO. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try and stand up straight. Can you still hear me? Okay, great. So good afternoon. Thank you for... Does it really? Yeah, sure. Do you need help with that? Should be just the mouse right here. Oh, no way. Wow, I'm impressed. That's good. That's perfect. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So the other reason why I quite like coming here is because your staff are wonderful. So once again, good afternoon, and actually I am sincere on that because we work with all your staff and they are tremendous. So thank you for all your efforts helping us out, and hopefully we help you out as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here today and present our 2020 operating budget and special project submission. We are currently, as I get used to this, there we go. We're currently in the midst of our budget process. We brought forward some budget timelines in July. We're currently in October, and based on a discussion that we had in September, at the board, we brought forward two different scenarios for consideration by our board. And so we do have, we are looking forward to bringing a final draft approved budget for circulation to our board in November. And as Mike Walters, CAO of Lake Simcoe, mentioned, there are some things that are happening in between with provincial direction. So we did allow for a little bit of wiggle room in our budget process. So we are looking at a final budget approval in 2020. It could occur earlier than that. The key thing is a 30-day circulation to municipalities once our board has finalized that budget. Our budget itself consists of a couple of different components. Certainly it's expenditures matching revenues, which is important particularly for this budget. We have the operating levy, which is the municipally funded component that's shared amongst all municipalities. And those are supported by projects that we have on behalf of our municipalities. They fall under several categories, which I'll explain a little bit later, and also service agreements. And so it's the mix of all these that make up our budget. I'm happy to say that our board of directors at our last meeting did vote for a 0% municipal levy increase. We recognize that there are a lot of pressures going on right now with some of the pressures that municipalities have as well on municipal budgets. So that was important to them. And our operating levy is based on a formula that's based from still Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, which takes into account the population in the watershed and looks at the current value assessment within that area. So specific to 2020, we have, as I mentioned, two different budgets that were based on the board direction. We had initially a modest 2% increase that still met the City of Kawartha Lakes budget direction, no increase in dollars over last year. And then a worst case scenario that anticipates implementation of revenue shortfalls that we've seen in the past year, which has been a pressure on our budget. So as Mike mentioned, Simcoe did receive a shortfall in funding revenue from the province. It was a transfer payment agreement, and we received something similar as $25,000. And so we're anticipating a further reduction, kind of a proactive way of looking at our business and trying to anticipate any changes that occur. There are also some other changes that we've seen in employment programs, and certainly the scope of permitting is something that we understand will change as well once the regs are finalized and there's consultation on those. So those are some of the things that are kind of weighing in the balance that definitely impact on our business and affect some of those revenue sides that impact primarily the operating levy and projects. So our preliminary budget, as I mentioned, is also based on projects that we have to help support municipalities and help improve our business. We have something called general benefiting projects, and these are projects that are shared amongst all municipalities because there's a benefit to everyone for this kind of improvement to occur. And special benefiting projects, these are projects that are specific to one or usually two municipalities in our particular watershed, usually neighboring municipalities. An example would be lake management plans on Lake Scugog. That was a shared program between City of Kawartha Lakes and Region of Durham. And service agreements. And service agreements are a little bit different in that they don't form really part of the levy per se, but usually come out of a departmental budget. And this would include something like the risk management official services that we have an agreement with the city on. So I'll move into each of these aspects and just describe a little bit about each of these programs. So we have the general benefiting. This is one of those areas that is supported amongst all municipalities. We have a project called the digitization of corporate records. It's not an exciting kind of title to it, but it is extremely exciting when it comes down to implementation because we're able to put our records into a digital format and be able to access the information way quicker than if we were to run down to our file storage and try and find the files. So we've seen some massive improvements. We're focused on financial records and on our planning and permitting records. So this helps with the speed of efficiency on that basis and is then incorporated into our information management system that we're also getting underway this year. So we've seen some tremendous benefits. Certainly, our director of planning, engineering, and development has been saying that it's a great thing. He never realized what it was, how useful this was, and he hasn't had that opportunity in his past to experience the efficiency of that, having those records at his fingertips. And the other one is the development of a new website. This was started last year. And we'll finish this year. And so we're looking at revamping our website. It's almost a decade old, certainly due for a refresher. And so we're looking at an entire refresh on that platform. It was also based on an older programming language, and it just didn't do the things that we needed to do, certainly from an accessibility standpoint and from a mobile standpoint. So things are getting a little bit better into the modern age, if you want to call it, for the development of that website. In terms of the special project levy request, these are really key to make sure that they accomplish some of the objectives. Certainly, they support really well with your strategic plan and the healthy environment plan. And specifically in your strategic plan, there's the healthy environment goal. So these projects really fall well within that framework. We have lake management plans. I'll just mention those very briefly. We had Head and Rush Lake. They were approved by our board in March of this year, and we still have Pigeon Lake that we're working on. In a general sense, what we're doing is we want to be really aware of the First Nations and the consultation on that end, so we've given them lots of time to be able to comment, and we haven't received those yet, but we're still looking at trying to tidy that up. We've been fairly active on that front, so we'll be bringing that plan to our board this year for endorsement. There's the Lake Management Plan implementation, which is a key program. This really implements the activities within the lake management plans and some of the direction that was given. And this is a really important program in order to spearhead the action that has to occur on the landscape and protect our lands and waters for the future. Floodplain mapping, you'll see, is reduced over last year. That's because we're tidying up that project this year. The National Disaster Mitigation Funding is also wrapping up this year, and those two projects, specifically McLaren's Creek and McLaren's Creek and I should refer to my notes here. McLaren's Creek and Fenland Falls South Tributary are the two that will be finalized next year, early in the year. So the Lake Management Plan implementation is really key to a number of different things. Keeping our beaches open in the summer, healthy fisheries. It's helping beautify communities in the city of Kawartha Lakes. Helps build a proud community. We all want to live and work and play in the same area. It helps improve drinking water quality. And also supports a recreational base. That's really important for the economic drivers in this area. So it does support a number of different things, and it is really key to making sure that we protect that water for future generations. So you see that it is supported by grants and revenues. We have seen that this past year there was a few grants that we did not get some success on. An employment grant that was fairly significant, and also some stewardship grants with OMAFRA that were also frozen this year. So we've heard that some of those grants are opening up in terms of the OMAFRA grant, but employment program grants are certainly one that we haven't heard any news on. And that reflects some of the increase that you see from the previous years. The coordination of the programs is really important amongst all the individual projects, and to make sure the community is aware and active within the implementation framework. There's still a lot of work to do to make sure that people are active and reduce some of the barriers to implementation. Floodplain mapping is really important for protecting people and their investment, making livable communities and sustainable development. So we're happy to say that this year we finalized a number of studies. Dunsford Creek in April. We finalized the Burnt River in May and Bobcaygeon Tributary in July. We are also planning on having our Mariposa Brook floodplain study come forward in our November meeting for board endorsement. So there's been a lot of activity on this particular file, and the other two studies are also well underway. So this is how everything shakes out at the end of the day. We see a slight, even though the operating levy is consistent amongst all municipalities, due to that apportionment formula that I mentioned earlier. Some of the other municipalities, primarily Durham, has grown in assessment base over the other municipalities. And so that results in a net decrease for the city of Kawartha Lakes on the operating side. There's a decrease in the general benefiting project, and you can see the information for the rest of it. In the end, it's a $17,000 decrease for the city that we're looking at in the 2020 budget. I did want to provide a little bit of context if I have some time still available, if that's right. I would mention too, I was able to hand out some information to Christine Briggs. It's a summary of work that we've done on the implementation project as of the end of this month. So So there's some information that you have that you can refer to on the implementation side of things. And I'll just provide a couple of highlights here. The community grants and landowner grants were something that was really well subscribed to. It was particularly the landowner grants. You can see that there's $35,000 awarded for projects. The overall project value was almost $300,000. So this was people investing in different improvement projects on their landscapes, which was tremendous. That's almost a 1 to 8, if my math is working fairly reasonably. So that is a tremendous return on the dollar and a tremendous investment in protecting our lakes and rivers. We also had a subscription to the 2019 grants for the landowner portion. It was 2 times over what we had money for. And my understanding is that applications are already rolling in for 2020. So people are very excited about that program. We also completed a project that you see in the picture above with a bunch of little kids having a lot of fun outdoors. And what that was is Alexandra Public School, and they diverted 14,500 liters of runoff through a rainfall garden on their schoolyard. So that was really well received and helps promote a stewardship ethic amongst the young generation moving forward. We also had a sediment erosion control symposium that was held for contractors, and that was really well received. We heard some really positive feedback, and some feedback that we should continue doing that amongst the professionals. And with a little bit of a twist too, they'd also like to see not only the erosion sediment control symposium carry on because they were exposed to a number of erosion sedimentation controls that they hadn't seen before or hadn't utilized, but they also want to see it in practice. So that's something that they were quite keen on. Some other statistics, we had 430 native plants planted as part of the implementation activity and almost 10,500 trees planted as a result of these activities. We had 21 events engaging 680 landowners and did 51 landowner site visits that we hope will translate into activity on the ground. We also had some nearshore monitoring. This was specifically looking at areas that we can focus on from the shoreline standpoint. And people are very engaged in the work we're doing. Sometimes you find that finding citizen scientists is a difficult proposition. I remember doing it about almost 20 years ago, and the volunteer base wasn't there at that point in time. We have over 60 citizen scientists that are collecting samples, which is tremendous. There's a lot of interest in doing their part. So that's very exciting to see. And so this will result in an analysis of that information, which is being done into early 2020, specifically on Sturgeon Lake. It's the 3rd year, so that's wrapping up, and Balsam, Cameron, and Pigeon are coming online. An exciting piece too is we're doing a little bit of science as part of this. We have heard that there's a lot of issues in terms of permitting and aerators. So we want to facilitate that process and figure out what works best. So we are testing an aeration system and working with academia in order to design the best way to do this. And while we're doing that, we also hope that by involving Trent Severn Waterway in this process, that they will understand what the aerator does, the impact on the environment, and therefore be able to have a standard set of permit conditions as opposed to not knowing how to handle something that's a little bit outside the box. So very exciting. And the other one I'll touch on here is the Sturgeon Point Golf Club. There was some funding that didn't come through. Again, it was a provincial fund. And what happened was the Sturgeon Point Golf Club held a golf tournament to raise funds. And so they raised funds to pay for the planting materials that helped naturalize, I believe, 68 feet of shoreline. And beaches are also, I know, very near and dear to the city. It certainly has a lot of economic draw. I've seen it down in Port Perry, where there's a sign that was posted. It was a blue-green algae bloom, and so everyone is still posted. And so it's certainly, when people come to the waterfront area, it certainly is something that everyone takes notice of. I've heard conversations myself about water quality and not being able to trust the water quality as a result. So certainly when there's a posting, it certainly does impact on tourism and on people's perception of what the water quality is. So with these two projects, we're working with the health unit in order to try and figure out what the best solution is for our beaches. I think I mentioned previously that we found that there was bacteria in the sand culture, which is interesting. That is something that we wouldn't have traditionally looked at from a stewardship option. So that's what we're doing, is trying to figure out what is the reason for the high bacteria counts for these important beaches in the city, and then be able to recommend some stewardship options as a result. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. We'll see if there's any questions for you. We get a motion to receive and refer to budget process. Councillor Seymour, Fagan, and Dunn. Councillor Elmsley, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Mark, thanks for coming today, and thanks for your presentation. You touched on permitting, and certainly something you and I have had a discussion about on a couple of occasions. I'm just wondering, what is the average timing on a permit? If somebody applies and it's not overly complex, how long should they expect to wait to get their permit issued?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is a very, for me, it's actually kind of exciting. We are, planning and permitting to me is very important. It's really where things hit the road. It's people's investments in their properties. So for me, customer service is very important on that side of things. We have been working hard to make sure that we follow something called the CALC standards. It's Conservation Authorities Liaison Committee that was done about 10 years ago. And it was some standards that were defined by the development industry, conservation authorities, and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, who were responsible for us at the time. And so they established some KPI, some metrics for reporting, and there's a 36 CA collective right now that is working to streamline a lot of our permitting activities. So we've reduced those timelines by a third, which is pretty significant. And so we've incorporated that into our reporting as well, which we report to our board on a monthly basis. So those standards at this point in time for permits is 7 days at the very front end. And then 14 days, so 7 days when we have a pre-consultation is to get back and say, here is everything that we require. 14 days to look at the information once we receive a package from a developer, and outline any information that might still be needed, or we can start working on the file. And then 21 days for a review of a permit. Before that, it was basically an extra week on each component. And the other interesting thing is that we've, thanks actually to a former councillor, and it was Councillor Bredner at the time. He sat on our board, and so we've actually implemented a process where if it's a permit that does not need a lot of analysis, it's a fairly streamlined permit, we'll actually turn those around in a day if it comes into us as a complete package.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think that getting those under control certainly enhances the reputation not only of the Conservation Authority but also of the city. Yeah. And I guess I'm just curious, does that also apply for things like consultations with when a developer comes into the city and sits down with planning and all the agencies, and you all have an opportunity to comment, is that the same kind of timelines, or does that take longer?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the planning comments are what we do is we input into the city's planning process or one of our other municipalities. So it's the municipal process that really drives that. We input our comments, and then we work towards the timeframes that are given to us on the various planning applications. So we kind of work on that end, but I would say that they're extremely beneficial to have all the partners around the table and kind of understand what each of our particular roles are and where that interference might occur in some cases, and be able to work that out ahead of time. And then that gives the developer a solid base to go on, so they don't waste their time or energy producing materials that will only be contradicted by another agency. So they're extremely beneficial. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we have a motion. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thanks
Thank you
for
very
coming.
much.
Okay, we'll move into item 5.4, which is the Kawartha Lakes Public Library Board 2020 proposed budget. Jamie Anderson, Library Director, CEO. Welcome, sir. Just get you to put the mic on as well, if you would, Jamie. Perfect. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to present to you the 2020 operating budget for the Kawartha Lakes Public Library. My name is Jamie Anderson. I'm the Library Director and CEO. Joining me today is Susan Ferguson, our Library Board Chair as well. Our Library Treasurer, who also happens to be the City Treasurer, is Carolyn Daines. I'll be giving you a quick overview of the library's service, then discuss some of our performance indicators over the last 5 years, as well as some of our 2019 achievements, our strategic priorities for 2020, and then getting into the budget request. We have 14 branches throughout the city. We are open on average 326 hours each and every week. That is a total of over 16,800 hours each year. Including myself, there are 8 full-time staff, 36 part-time staff. We have an equivalent, full-time equivalent of 25 full-time staff. Something to keep in mind, though, is 12 of our 14 branches are single-person operations, meaning that there is just one person working there by themselves at any one time. Some of our 2019 achievements include the development of a new 4-year strategic plan, the implementation of our outcome measurement surveys, expansion of outreach into the community, and further developing community partnerships. Our performance indicators for the last 5 years, from 2014 through to 2018, have been quite positive. Our items circulated has remained level. This is not just an occurrence here in the Kawartha Lakes, but is happening throughout libraries in the province. What it is we're finding that people are turning to the library for other purposes than just books. That said, we are seeing about 175% increase over 5 years in the ebook borrowing. Our branch visits are up by about almost 7%. 2014, we had 221,000 visitors with 18 branches. In 2018, we had 236,000 visitors with 14 branches. That's the equivalent of 12 sold-out Leafs games at Scotiabank Arena. It is difficult to assess our virtual interactions with our customers. We do estimate that face-to-face interactions with our customers only accounts for about 35 to 40% of our overall interactions. Our programs offered have increased over the last 5 years. We've been able to increase the number of programs to 2,300 in 2018, an increase of about 50%. We've also been able to increase the attendance at these programs over the same period up to almost 18,000 last year, an increase of about 34% over those 5 years. And then finally, computer usage and Wi-Fi usage has continued to grow over that time frame. Over those 5 years, it's increased by over 25%, almost 60,000 connections last year. Our 2019 numbers year to date remain on trend. Circulation is level. Our ebooks are climbing slightly. Our branch visits are down a little bit this year so far for a couple of reasons. One, the long winter. Our January, February, and April door counts were lower than normal, as well as one of our people counters in Lindsay went on the fritz a couple of times, so we lost about a month's worth of data there. We have been able to still increase our programs offered this year up to 2,700. And our program attendance so far this year is up to 17,600. We've actually had our 3 busiest programming months for attendance ever this March, July, and August. And then finally, we're also still seeing a continued increase in the computer usage and Wi-Fi access as well. There's a couple of photographs here, one of a teen sewing class in Dunsford. Another is a patron who won an iPad and then promptly came into the library to ask us how to use it. So we were very happy to show her how to use it and all the resources that she can get at the library. Programming in the City of Kawartha Lakes is very highly valued by our residents. In our survey this spring for the strategic plan, programming ranked a very close second behind the collections in importance to our patrons. They ranked collection at 27% in priority, and then programming at 26%. With 18 branches in 2014, per capita, we had 18% of the city attend a program. In 2018, with 14 branches, that number rose to 24%. Conservative estimate for this year is we will hit 26% attendance. Our target overall is 30% with programming. Oops. Here's another photograph of a successful program. This was part of the Dunsford Speakers Series put on by the Friends of the Dunsford Library. But programming goes beyond just increasing attendance. Programming has an impact on the lives of our citizens. We've been able to launch outcome surveys and impact surveys this summer and fall. With our adult technology classes, 96% of the respondents indicated that they feel more knowledgeable about the use of technology after the course. With our summer reading club, 91% of parents indicated that their child maintained or increased their reading level by participating in the program. This is a strong indicator of educational success for the school year for that child. Though open for less than 2 years, Omimi still continues to be a success and grow. It's our 4th busiest branch now. To the end of September, branch usage is up by 42% over the same period in 2018. Over the first 3 quarters of this year, branch usage has increased by over 200% for the last full year in Coronation Hall. The branch has become an anchor, a downtown anchor for Omimi's revitalization. We are busy not because we're located beside a successful cafe. We have a successful cafe located beside us because we're busy. Our 2020 strategic priorities. We'll begin branch interior refreshes. We'll continue to work with the city on Bobcaygeon relocation. We hope to work with the city on the Fenland Falls renovation and expansion. We'll expand our partnerships, expand technology training, and pilot lending of technology resources. Which leads me into the budget for 2020. We anticipate that the library revenues will remain the same in 2020, with an anticipated revenues of $286,433. At this point, we do not anticipate the loss of any provincial operating grants for the 2020 fiscal year. Library expenditures. Our board chair will speak further to the new position request momentarily. Excluding the manager position, we would see our expenditures budget remain pretty close to the same as 2019. Excluding that position, at this time, this budget would be a 0% budget and would not affect service levels. Overall, including the new position, we will be looking at an increase of $113,616 in 2020. So just in brief, our expected revenues are to remain the same in 2020 at $286,433. Including the requested manager position, total expenditures are expected to rise to $113,616 over 2019. The library's overall budget request would increase by $113,616 over 2019 to $2,020,096. At this point, I'll hand the presentation over to Chairperson Sue Ferguson.
Thank you, Jamie. Gives me the chance to bring the good news, bad news story. We've just presented a 0% budget for 2020, excluding this new position ask, which would allow us to not compromise our services to our patrons, but the board realizes that this zero-based budget can only be done for this upcoming year. How do we weigh responsible fiscal restraint with our desire to excel and inspire imagination in our library? We have submitted, along with this zero-based budget, the board's request to hire a deputy CEO or a manager of public services. We feel we have adequate frontline staffing, but the full responsibility of the reporting is on our CEO. He's the only one who can recruit and hire, train, develop, and performance manage the 40 library staff. Our 2 area coordinators can manage branch services and provide direction and oversight of the staff, but are limited in their supervisory responsibilities and cannot perform direct performance or administer discipline. Because our CEO must deal with all the issues pertaining to staff management, along with the ongoing responsibilities of operational, financial, and personnel management of the library, as well as advancing the library's strategic plan, his capacity for more is severely restricted. This new position, the board feels, will not only allow for further development and training of staff, manage performance issues, improve reporting structure, and most importantly, allow for expansion in addressing current community needs, all which have been identified in our strategic plan. This would entail increasing branch usage and membership, as well as working towards increasing our programming and attendance. This new position can allow for development of new community partnerships and design collaboration with current stakeholders and community groups, as well as allow for succession planning. Not that Jamie's planning on leaving very soon, but it's always good to have succession planning in place. It goes without saying that having this position filled will ease the already heavy burden with which our CEO copes. Producing a zero-based budget will not allow us to fill this position within our finances, and the board has identified the position as a want and soon to be a need for continuing successful service to this community.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. We'll get a motion to receive and refer to the budget process. Councillor Vaile, you'll move that, seconded by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Any questions for the Library Board? Yes, Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you too, the deputy. One of the things that people say to me is basically things are very positive. The branches look great, but the hours are not the greatest, especially the rural communities. It's okay if it's open 7 days a week or 6 days a week in Lindsay, but in Dunsford or Omemee, I'm just speaking for my own ward, but I know other communities, other wards, they'd like to see the hours extended. I'm just wondering what the rationale is for this new position, but I know we're not here to debate that. But my question is, has the board ever looked at, we brought this up at the last meeting, but increasing the hours at the smaller branches so that people can, more than 2 or 3 days a week?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, one of the goals that has been identified by the consultants with the strategic plan is to advance the hours of all branches that are less than 20 hours up to 20 hours. And that would be most likely a budget ask in the 2021 budget proposal.
Thank you. I have a couple of quick questions, if I may. I noticed that your programs offered has climbed considerably over the last few years. Can you give us an example of some of the new programs that traditionally weren't offered but are now being offered?
Well, for example, the sewing program, we've been able to offer that. We were able to purchase...
Sewing?
Sewing.
Okay.
So we purchased 4 sewing machines, and those can move around to different branches. Through partnership with the Pingwak organization, we've been able to offer computer coding camps and robotic programs as well. One we have coming up in 2020 is working with Community Care, and it'll be supplying income tax clinics. So some examples.
Great, thank you. So my other question I have is over the last few years, the Library Board has consolidated a few branches to a few fewer, yet your numbers continue to grow overall. So how do you account for that?
Part of that is through the creation of the outreach position. So through the consolidation of several of the branches, Downeyville, Brent River, those hours were taken and created an outreach library specialist. Her role is literally to go out into the community, attend community programs, but also to help branches present programs. So as I mentioned, 12 or 14 branches are single-person operations. It's very difficult to present a program and check out a book at the same time. So this position is able to go out and either A, present the program, or work the desk while that staff person is able to present the program.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we have a motion. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you very much for coming today. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move into item 5.5, which is the Lindsay Downtown Business Improvement Area, the BIA, 2020 proposed budget. Charlie McDonald is the chair and Melissa McFarland is the general manager. Welcome, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for taking the time today to look at our 2020 budget. And I'll hand it over to our general manager, Melissa, to go through the slide presentation.
Thank you very much. So we're looking at, we always run in a fiscal year, of course, January to December, so we're looking for our 2020. We do have some new councillors who may not be as familiar with the BIA as some of the previous ones. So we're a municipal board under City Council. We represent all of the businesses in our defined geographical area in our downtown. And we work as an advocacy group on behalf of those downtown businesses. We manage the beautification, improvement, maintenance of that physical area. We work on lots of different marketing campaigns and special events that occur in the downtown. And of course, the overall goal is to improve the economic prosperity of the downtown and for those businesses. So how we've been sort of working, it looks like my things are a little off there, but we always operate under a municipal tax levy, so we set that each year. We work with the Treasurer's Department, so we set the levy each year. They put that line item on the taxes of the downtown property owners, and we've been experimenting with increases over the last few years. We sort of had a larger increase back in 2017 because it hadn't been changed for many, many years before that. And then sort of kept it status quo. Last year we elected to have a 2.5% increase just to sort of maintain cost of living increases. And then at our previous board meeting in September, our board had voted to do no increase for this year. And part of the reason for that is because the downtown construction that is happening, the first phase is almost completed. The downtown core starts the first of 3 years happening in the core. And we know that this is probably going to be somewhat of a burden on those downtown businesses who may struggle a little bit through this construction. We've elected not to put any sort of further burden on them with their taxes, so we've been doing no increase to our levy for 2020. We do have some additional sources of funding that we get throughout the year. $35,000 historically has come from the Community Partnership and Development Fund towards the beautification of downtown. This is a 50-50 matching. That's always been the case. For the past few years, the $35,000 that we do receive from this grant from the city, we have chosen to actually exceed. So we take $45,000 of our tax levy, which is over and above the $35,000 that we get from the city. This goes for all the beautification expenses for the downtown. Usually we get a summer student, so we get the Canada Summer Jobs Grant. We do get our HST rebate back from the city for all of our purchases from the previous year. This is about $9,000. And then last year and the year before, we do have the community liaison position, who's in the downtown working and sort of being our man on the ground, but mostly doing the enforcement of the parking in the downtown. So that's sort of generally sort of what we can expect year to year as what goes into our overall budget. If there's special projects that come up through the year, we're always looking for additional sources of funding, grants. We've applied for the Legacy Chest Fund in the past, so we're also programming through the Kawartha Lakes Community Futures. So we're always looking for those opportunities for special projects through the year. Sort of how it's allocated in general, how we break it down. Administration, of course, that goes towards our payroll and all the expenses that come towards that. Utilities, hydro and internet, phone, and our insurance. Miscellaneous is just sort of the cost of what it costs to run the organization throughout the year. Beautification, of course, we're looking at all of the maintenance of the flowers and trees. We purchase those, maintain and replace all of the trees as needed, all of the hanging baskets and planters, and then, of course, the maintenance of those, which is probably one of our biggest costs, is maintaining the flowers and the trees that you see downtown. And then furniture and accessories, maintaining and replacing what's there as far as benches, the garbage cans, ashtrays. We do the flags, any signage, Christmas decorations, the Christmas tree each year, and of course all of the supplies that come with that. And then the rest of the balance goes towards marketing. We have lots of different promotional things that we do. We have a subsidy program through the radio station that allows us to sort of put some money towards a program that allows other businesses to have radio ads in conjunction with one another, and it brings the cost way down for them to be able to do that. Lots of print and digital media advertising, and then as well as the events that you see throughout the downtown. We've run some events in the past couple of years that have been massively successful, that we're keeping that running because they're doing really, really well, and lots of great things happening in the downtown. So I'm going to turn it over to Charlie to talk about what we're asking for this coming year.
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, number one is the renewal of the $30,000 subsidy for our community liaison, which is for our parking. I have talked to Aaron Sloan, and he is okay with us continuing because this was a 2-year trial, and our 2 years is up. But I think he was okay with this until and continue doing this until our parking study is complete, which will be probably at the first of the year. Will be presented to you in January, February. And then I guess based on that study, I guess that'll be looked at on how we're going to go forward as far as the parking downtown. And currently we're reimbursed monthly, so whatever hours that our parking individual puts in, we just present that bill to the city and they reimburse us monthly. So we'll probably wait for an answer for that one, if that goes through. And the additional number 2 is the $10,000 at present for the 50/50. As Melissa pointed out earlier, we throw in $45,000 because that's what is needed. And you currently throw in $30,000. It takes more than that, so we're requesting $10,000 to match what everybody downtown puts in for the beautification. So that's a request that we've asked for a few years, and we'd like you to consider that this year. And number 3 is a little concerning too, is the furniture. As we all know, the reconstruction of downtown's happening. And right now, we've asked many questions right now on who is going to be paying for all the benches and garbage and so on. Nobody has given us an answer. I'm asking and requesting that somebody look and ask engineering or somebody. We recommend that engineering should be in their budget. We've never paid for furniture and garbage pails and so on. We've always in the past maintained and replaced when they've been damaged, but I encourage people, whatever department this is, I encourage them to look at this very shortly and find out who's going to pay for this. It would be very sad that we spend millions and millions of dollars downtown and then and there's no benches and no garbage cans to put on our downtown. So again, we cannot get an answer of where this budget is and where this money is going to come from. I encourage people to look at this shortly because sometimes it takes a year to order chairs and new garbage cans and so on. On that note, that's all I have. If there's any questions concerning our presentation today.
Thank you very much. We'll get a motion to receive and refer to the budget process. Councillor O'Reilly and Dunn, thank you. Any questions for the deputants? I have a quick one.
Yes.
You've got in your beautification under contract fees trash pickup. I've had a couple questions about that. Is this the public bins that are out on the sidewalk? Who's picks those up, or who's responsible for those?
I can answer that. So that's part of the general pickup in the downtown of the main bins that you see along the sides of the streets. That's Miller, who does that as part of their, so I think they actually do it twice a week. I think they actually do the Thursday morning like normal for Lindsay. I think they actually do a pickup on Mondays as well. There's always a little bit extra. The gentlemen that we have who do all of our watering and our maintenance downtown, they keep an eye on those garbage cans because there's a few that are sort of a little bit out of the realm of what Miller will pick up. especially if you know we call it the Parkette, that lot beside the dollar store behind Value Mart in the middle. They won't pick up those bins. They're a little too far off the sidewalk for them, and those are heavily used. So those guys tend to keep sort of on top of those bins, as well as the ones at the bus terminal at Victoria Avenue, heavily used. So they're always keeping an eye to make sure those stay clear through the week.
So if they see the bins overflowing, traditionally they'll keep an eye
Correct.
on them in between the regular pickups.
And also on that is all our special events too, on weekends when you have the Classics on Kent and so on, that we have to dispose of all that garbage too and get a bin to do that.
Thank you for that. I'm going to ask engineering, Juan, do you have any feedback on the furniture in the downtown? I know that question came up in Fenelon Falls as well. I would assume that we're replacing what we're moving, but maybe I'm speaking out of turn. Do you have any update on that for us?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the assets within the Lindsay BIA are not owned by the City of Kawartha Lakes. Those are privately owned. I believe that the city or Lindsay originally purchased it, and then when the BIA was created, it was gifted to the BIA to maintain and use. So as part of our downtown reconstruction in the budget right now, as it currently stands, we have the roads, the pipes, the sidewalk, but no furniture other than the streetlights and the associations with the streetlights. So the plan was to reinstate the existing furniture after the project has been completed.
Okay, thank you. We'll follow up on that. Sorry, did you?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. And so we were aware of the general issue, and we are reviewing our street furniture policy into 2020. So I'll say stay tuned, but it certainly is something that's on the radar, and we're looking and reviewing how we would invest in that after the project.
Through you, Mr. Mayor and Council, yeah, thank you very much for that answer. I just want to make sure you look at the state of our garbage bins and our benches right now. I don't think that would be spending millions of dollars downtown, in my opinion, would be putting up the same that we have right now. So if you could take a moment to look at what we have and what we could save, that would be good. Thank you.
Our goal is to revitalize our downtown, so stay tuned. Thank you. Any further questions for the BIA? Seeing none, we'll have a motion. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you for coming today and sharing your budget with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's keep going. And item 5.6, the Kawartha Lakes Municipal Airport Committee, a yearly update. Bob Hunter from the Lumex Group and Malcolm Cook from the Lumex Group. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, and good afternoon.
Just get you to put that microphone on if you would, Bob. That works.
Is that better? Okay, sorry. As the mayor said, my name is Bob Hunter. This is Malcolm Cook. We are with the Lumex Group, who are contracted to manage the airport. We're pleased to have the opportunity to be here this morning. Is this what we need? Where's that? Okay. The arrow on the right. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Before we get started, I'd just like to touch on the highlights of our presentation. Excuse me. Everything we do at the airport, our first priority is safety. So all of the improvements and the enhancements that we make at the airport, safety is our priority. We're witnessing steady growth at the airport, and both in tenants, number of aircraft based there, number of individuals with aircraft at the airport, and the number of visitors that we're seeing at the airport. We'll go into more detail on that as the presentation goes on. Our fuel sales, which is a major source of our revenue, are up 53% over the last 3 years. I just looked at this month's sales when I was at the airport this morning. We're up 20% this month over last year. So our fuel sales are increasing quite dramatically. The reason I focus on fuel sales is it's the only yardstick we have to gauge activity at the airport. We're not there 24 hours a day, so we can't count the comings and goings. So it's fuel sales that really are the yardstick we use to determine the activity at the airport, and they're increasing very steadily. The airport is now financially breaking even from an operational point of view. Our revenues now equal our operational costs, which I think is very significant. And according to a recent survey by AMCO, the Association of Airport Managers, only 1 in 5 airports do operationally break even. So we're very proud to have reached that stage, and we'll get into more detail on that as well. Considerable interest being expressed in private hangar ownership at the airport, which again we'll touch on, but is again an indication of the interest and the potential economic growth, and the future potential at the airport for commercial growth as we're located on Highway 35 with considerable land available for growth. So I'll turn it over to Malcolm now, who is the airport operations manager, and have a little sympathy for Malcolm. Just yesterday, he and his girlfriend closed on a house here in Kawartha Lakes. So last night was their first night in the house, and now he's here talking to you. So over to Malcolm.
All right, thank you, Bob. Yeah, as he said, that's correct. I just moved. I'm a 2-day resident of the city of Kawartha Lakes now. Actually, Mimi specifically.
Thanks for the property taxes.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Mayor. All right, so I'm going to give an operational breakdown of the airport and how we do business and where it all comes from. So primarily, we get our customer base is 2 sources. First, that's our local aircraft. That includes not only aircraft that are specifically based at Lindsay, pilots and owners, but also owners of aircraft that are all around the Kawartha Lake region. There's small airstrips all over the place. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many exist in the city of Kawartha Lakes, but it's quite numerous. As well as water aerodromes, aircraft can also take off of water, or at least some of them can. And as well as Peterborough, the city of Peterborough and their airport, and the city of Oshawa. Both we consider to be locals, given that they use the city of Kawartha Lakes Municipal Airport as their base for fuel, for maintenance, a place to park, a place to keep the aircraft during the winter when they can't be taking off of grass strips. That would basically cover our locals. In addition to our locals, we get visiting aircraft. These aircraft are from practically everywhere, all over Canada, all over Ontario, the US. These are typically aircraft that are on specific missions. That can be weekend trips up to the Kawartha Lakes area, business travel, airborne survey missions, etc. The one aircraft you can see up there in the center on the bottom, that Piper Navajo, is actually a pilot from Ottawa who flew specifically here just to visit a store in the Kawartha Lakes that wasn't available in the Ottawa region. Other visitors include aircraft on missions such as medevacs. We see a large amount of medevac traffic, mostly from Orange. As you know, the hospital in town here doesn't have a helipad, so they do all their patient transfers out of the Kawartha Lakes Airport. We're about a 4-minute drive from the hospital. So that includes patient transfers as well as emergency evacuations. In addition to that, our 24/7 access to jet fuel, which is pretty rare in terms of airports that are kind of on the smaller side, allows them with extended range into northern parts of the community, including Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes. It allows them to drastically extend how far they can go from their Toronto base. Recent improvements at the airport have also brought us the attention of the RCMP, who have now decided to use the airport for their prisoner transfers rather than go through the Peterborough Airport, as they were previously doing. This allows both the pilot and the correctional officers at Central East a very convenient destination to be able to do these transfers through. So we're proud to say they're kind of a new tenant of ours. As well, again, our 24/7 access to jet fuel brings us another fuel stop for Rotary Wing OPP traffic when they're doing highway patrols and et cetera. Canadian Armed Forces, they're pretty much a staple in all of aviation. Wherever you go, the Air Force seems to follow. They use the airport not only as a specific destination to do training and conduct training on our field, but again, that 24/7 jet fuel access for the helicopters allows the search and rescue aircraft to reach destinations well out of the way that they'd normally be able to reach. And we're proud to say that we've established that relationship with them. Residents of the Kawartha Lakes are able to benefit from the area or from the airport with our scenic tour and what we can offer there. It's year-round availability out of the airport. You can get a nice bird's eye view of the entire Kawartha Lakes region. I myself do quite a bit of these flights. It's a lot of fun. People love it. I sell a lot of them as gifts. And it's just a way for the residents to be able to get out and interact with aviation and experience something that's pretty special that not everybody in the country is able to enjoy. In addition to the sightseeing and introductory flights, we can also offer flight training to the residents here. That includes private pilot training, recreational pilot permits, all their written exams, licensing, etc. On top of that, we're also part of the complex system of flight training that exists in Canada. You can't just flight train with 1 or 2 airports. There needs to be a network. Us being a part of that network allows us to proudly say that we're helping train the next generation of commercial pilots, which has been a rapidly growing industry, like at unprecedented rates for the past few years now. So that would include the overall summary of our users. I'm going to get into our actual tenants now, who are fully based at the airport, our businesses and our local residents. So as you know, the city owns 2 large hangar structures at the airport. They each have 10 internal units occupied by 10 aircraft each. They're all full right now. We've been seeing a lot of demand for hangar space recently. That's resulted in us having quite a substantial wait list at this time that continues to grow. As well as that growth, we also see growth in our tie-down areas. When I first started at the airport about 2 years ago, there was 12 airplanes on the field. Now there's 21. It's required us to build infrastructure to accommodate for them, and we're likely going to be doing the same thing this year coming up. We seem to be attracting a lot of pilots from the Toronto and Oshawa area. The airport's also home to our lovely restaurant. It seems to be a local favorite. It's able there to provide for refreshment for pilots who are visiting, as well as, of course, serves the residents of the Kawartha Lakes. People seem to love the place. They rave about it. Our flight school that I talked about earlier is W. Aeroflight. Again, they're able to cover pretty much everything in terms of recreational and private flight training. Currently, they're working with 6 or more students. I think I saw a new one today. They might be at 7 now. I'm not sure. They have 2 aircraft that are based at the airport full time. Unfortunately, just like every other flight school, they're currently challenged right now by a nationwide instructor shortage. That seems to be the problem with every major flight school and minor flight school in the country. Again, aviation's growing at an unprecedented rate. The airlines are just snatching these instructors up. Despite that, the flight school does continue to operate, and they continue to provide training. Horizon Aircraft, previously known as Eric B. Robinson Limited, which was previously a maintenance operation. Mr. Robinson and his son have recently developed a prototype for a hybrid electric drive aircraft. That's really all I can say on that at this point. I don't have many more details, but I can tell you there's more to come soon. Our recent improvements that we've taken, the renovations we've done through the terminal and the pilot lounge area have also attracted a new local business owner to open up a pilot and gift supply store, allowing us to both sell gifts out of the airport as well as supplies to support local flight schools, the supplies that students need for their commercial pilot training. So we like to think of ourselves more than just a business platform in the city of Kawartha Lakes. We're also an integral part of the community. We're providing services like group tours and orientations. I've done a whole bunch of these in the past little while, including daycare groups, kids groups, schools, community care groups, long-term care groups, etc. We're just a great destination for folks to be able to come out and interact, learn about aviation, and really start to understand, what's going on in that world that's above our heads all the time that not everybody gets the chance to do. In addition to those tour groups, we also actively look for opportunities for hosting events, including events in the past such as Kawartha Classics. We're part of the annual Clean 99's poker run. Last year we had our Runway Fun Day event, as well as others that I'll touch into going forward. Presentations. So we also actively not just look to host these sort of orientations and presentations at the airport itself, but we also actively look for opportunities to go outside of the airport and interact with the communities, including organizations like Probus, Rotary Group. I've done multiple presentations at various schools through the Kawartha Lakes Pine Ridge District School Board, Durham College even, and last year we even had a co-op student from LCVI over at the airport, and we're hoping to set the same thing up again this year going forward. Code for Kids, the unnamed event that I previously mentioned, is run by the Kawartha Lakes Flying Club. Annual event that has record numbers in terms of getting kids out to go for a free flight. It's kids 8 to 17 with essentially the intent to inspire our new generation of potential pilots to look into the aviation industry as a growing and viable choice for a career. And last but not least, you might have seen us down at the past couple Santa Claus parades. The Lumex group has been very active in terms of getting their name out there, bringing their emergency exercise simulator up, and just making a presence wherever we can to get people interested and get people out to the airport to come and interact with us and ask what we do and how we're a part of the community. And I'm going to turn it back to Bob now.
Thanks, Malcolm. So in addition to the operations of the airport, we understand our responsibility goes beyond that to promoting the airport. And Malcolm and I frequently go out to other airports or other groups of pilots to promote Kawartha Lakes, to promote the airport, to promote the benefits of coming here, to visit, to base their airport here, to buy fuel here. Recently, we've been to Oshawa and to Buttonville to promote like that, and they've been very well received and very successful in terms of bringing traffic in here. We're also looking for unique opportunities to increase revenues. This was one that we came across that we took advantage of. Hope Air is a charity based in Toronto where private pilots with their own aircraft and at their own cost provide air transportation for people having to fly long distances for non-emergency medical appointments. So we felt that if we offered these pilots a small fuel discount for their Hope Air flying, that we could generate revenues for the airport that we wouldn't otherwise see, and at the same time support this very deserving charity. And it's proven to be very successful. We're selling them a lot of fuel, and they in turn are very appreciative of the gesture on our part. We stay quite close. We have our ear to the ground in terms of developments at other airports. There's always rumors. There's always things happening. There's airports potentially closing, etc. And any of the tenants at those airports become potential opportunity for us here at Kawartha Lakes. So we keep our ear close to the ground. We talk to these folks. We meet with them. We stay in touch every time we uncover a possibility with an eye to them either establishing business here or moving here. We're very much aware of such developments. And in addition, once in a while, we take an advantage to say thank you for the folks who come in to buy fuel. I know I keep referring to buying fuel, but it's a major profit center for the airport. And this was a recent promotion where we gave away the restaurant's famous butter tarts in exchange for people who came in to buy fuel. We're always considering and initiating improvements that will make the airport safer, more welcoming, more efficient. And this is a summary of what we've undertaken recently. The main runway was resurfaced last year. It was becoming very, very bumpy. It was heaving, frost heaves, etc. Was becoming very discouraging for pilots to use, and in fact was getting on the verge of being unsafe. We put a modest overlay on it, which has really done more than we anticipated. It really is now in beautiful condition. We're doing routine maintenance, crack sealing and the like, and we expect that it will last for quite a few years yet with just routine maintenance. We've recently put in this taxiway that you can see circled there. The reason for that was virtually 100% safety. Aircraft landing on the runway that you can see there have to land and roll out before they get to the point that they can stop and turn around. And previously, they would have to taxi all the way back to the start of the runway before they could exit. That created a real safety issue for other aircraft wanting to take off or land on the same runway. So now, with this taxiway, they can exit once they're finished their landing procedure and taxi back to the terminal, and activities can continue unabated. A major safety issue. It's been received very well by local and visiting pilots and has made quite a difference. I'll have more on our hangar development in a moment, but this small taxiway that you see there was installed this year strictly for that purpose, so that private individuals could rent land from the airport and build their own hangar rather than causing the city to have to be a landlord for aircraft registered or located at the airport. And we've also done an internal access road parallel to Highway 35 from the restaurant parking lot up to the north hangars. The reason for that was the only access to the northern part of the airport, which is the part that is being increasingly active and developed, was a small entrance off Highway 35 where there was no merge lane or no turning lane, and we were really concerned about the potential danger there. We were also being encouraged, of course, by MOT to close it. So we built this internal road that now enables us to close that entrance and exit. And in addition, will allow us to control the vehicle traffic that is accessing the airport, which we were unable to do previously. The lounge, excuse me, the pilot lounge at the airport is quite important to create a welcoming environment to pilots who are waiting for their passengers, more particularly for the orange pilots who frequently have to wait for a period of time while their aircraft's being refueled or they're waiting for the ambulance to deliver the patient from the terminal. We inherited a beautiful collection of model aircraft that was put together by the individual that you see there, and it's made quite a difference. It's quite a welcoming space now that is really well received. I mentioned a minute ago about the vehicle control gates. The one on the right is the one on the road that I just referred to. It's operated by a keypad that the locals have the code to, the local airport owners have the code to. The other one is operated by a card that EMS has in every ambulance, and just in case in the winter, if it packs in, it also can be operated by the siren on the ambulance. Recently, in conjunction with the city's planning department and with NAV Canada and Transport Canada, I don't think you can make out the actual numbers there, but we've put together this matrix that identifies height limitations in certain areas around the airport. This will make life a lot easier, I think, for the planning department in terms of what may or may not be feasible, but I want to emphasize that these are recommendations. They are not hard and fast limitations, and we certainly don't intend to in any way inhibit any development in the city. And in fact, the limitations really are not or should not be onerous at all, but it's good to know what would potentially interfere with aircraft traffic in the future. It's mandatory for an airport that really considers itself a viable alternative to other airports to have proper instrument approaches that allows aircraft, and in this case, again, most particularly Orange, to access the airport in inclement weather conditions. It's taken us a while to get to this stage, but we've now developed these instrument approaches based on GPS signals that will allow aircraft now to access the airport when weather conditions would not otherwise allow. Future planning. We're working on a few items that you might find interesting. I've mentioned private hangars at length here, but this is an important expansion opportunity. I showed you the taxiway that we've just installed, and we feel it's a very viable way to expand the airport at virtually no cost to the city, following the Peterborough example. Individual aircraft owners want to have their aircraft hangared, and if they're willing to spend what it takes to build a hangar, we're only too happy to accommodate by renting them the land to allow them to do so. When individuals or businesses, because some of these are businesses, not just individuals that own these aircraft, when they go to the extreme of building such a hangar, you can pretty much count on the fact that that they have a viable aircraft and an aircraft that will bring activity to the city and fuel sales to the airport. We've got tremendous interest in this venture. We anticipate that there will be 8 hangars start construction at the first opportunity in the spring. We're in the process of signing leases. I think the lease came to the attention of council recently. And we're looking forward to seeing that development. The hangars that will be built by these private individuals will be strictly controlled by the airport in terms of their style and their color and their look, so that it will be still a professional looking environment, not just slapdash whatever the individual wants. We're making plans for the future for changing our current secondary runway, which you can make out there as a grass runway, which is very infrequently used. Our future planning is to slightly change the orientation of that runway and to pave it. There's many advantages of doing that, not the least of which is once we have a secondary runway, it will take a considerable amount of the traffic from the existing runway, which, as many of you know, the arrival and departure path of that runway comes directly over town and over the new development at the corner of 35 and Colborne. So the secondary runway, if we are able to do this, will take, like I say, a considerable amount of traffic off that runway and make us a much better neighbor. In addition to that, one of the benefits of realigning it is it will open up more area for development at the north end of the airport where we're running out of space, and enable us to do more commercial development there. As far as the paving is concerned, the vast majority of aircraft at the airport, and more importantly visitors to the aircraft, don't want to land on grass. They are to the point that they insist on paved surfaces on which to land. So this is something, we're doing some preliminary planning on this at the moment, but we're hoping in future that this could be something that we see happen. We think it will be a major improvement to the airport. So here we have Malcolm's creative genius as to what the airport might look like in the future. You can see the private hangars that I was referring to. There's 8 there. We actually could probably put 16 in where those 8 show. They're a little bit too large in scale. You can see some of the commercial development that we anticipate along Highway 35, and the new runway as we anticipate it will look like, and the taxiways to service it. That's what we hope the airport will look like within a few years, and certainly feel that that will be of benefit to the community. So I'll leave you with this comment to the effect that the airport is certainly a valuable asset that is providing economic, social, and community benefits to the city, that is paying its way without the necessity of operational funding support. We're very pleased to be able to say that, and we're very proud of what we've been able to achieve over the last few years. Before I open it for questions, on a personal note, I'd like to let you know that I'm moving on to other opportunities at the end of the year. It's been a pleasure working with city staff and with the city as a whole, and I'll miss you, but I'm sure that the airport will have success in the future, and it's been a pleasure to work with the city. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to accommodate.
Sounds good. Thank you, gentlemen. We get a motion to receive the presentation, Councillor Vale and Richardson. Are there any questions for the deputant? Councillor Riley?
Thank you, and You're anticipating in the spring that potentially you could start on the 8 hangars? That's what you're hoping to do?
I'm sorry, you say in the spring?
Yes.
Yes, we are putting the leases together on 8 sites, and we would have got started this year, but we just sort of ran out of time in terms of the negotiation and council having to approve the lease and so on. But we anticipate construction will start immediately in the spring, yes.
You may or may not have the answer to this. Next year, the International Plowing Match is coming here. Would there ever be, I don't know if they've secured land for their famous helicopter rides, would there be any potential, because it's at the fairgrounds, would there be potential for them to have helicopter rides at the airport, or would that conflict with your normal business?
Oh, absolutely. We are open to anything like that. I just heard about the International Plowing Match just the other day, and we have already talked about it, and we anticipate that there'll be significant happenings at the airport, and we would accommodate whatever could take place, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask, how will we receive your capital budget requests or your budget for next year? I know Juan is the city liaison. Is that coming through our budget process? Or?
Both the operating and the capital budget request are within the portfolio of the engineering department.
Thank you. Answers that question. We have no more questions, so on a personal note, Bob, thank you for all you've done in our community and for the airport. I think the pictures prove we've come a long way in the last half a dozen years, so I thank you for all your work on that.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Andy.
Appreciate that. We have a motion to receive. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you.
Thank you all.
So we'll move right into item 5.7 is the Kawartha Lakes Healthcare Initiative update. Cindy Snyder, our recruitment and retention coordinator, and Barb Vanderveen, the president. Welcome, ladies.
Are we live? There we go. Your Honor, Mayor Latham and councillors, thank you. My name is, as you heard, is Barb Vanderveen. I'm the president of Kawartha Lakes Healthcare Initiative, and of course, Cindy Snyder is standing beside me. I also have in our wings Judy Emmerich, who is another board member. Thank you for allowing us this time to provide our annual report. Many of you are well aware of our activities, so I will just focus on the emphasis of our core activities, which is recruitment and retention. A little waiting room humor. Obviously, this doesn't occur, or we hope this type of comment from a receptionist would not occur in a doctor's office, but you can get an idea of the problems associated with not having enough family physicians within the city. So our vision and mission, these are pretty simple but powerful statements of the work, of what guides our work, pardon me. And our directors have a strong understanding of the healthcare system and its unique opportunities and challenges. And our board is evolving, so we represent a changing demographics. We're made up of not only of members within the city, but also a widening age range, which we really appreciate. And having said all that, we are always looking for new members, so if anybody touches you on the shoulder and say they're interested in physician recruitment, send them our way. So we have appointed members and associates, of course, within the city, Ross Memorial Hospital, and also associate members. And it is vital that we have this two-way communication between the city and between the hospital. So as I mentioned, our main focus is recruitment and retention. All of the other activities that we do are directly tied to these functions. So family physician recruitment, as an agency of choice, we've been contacted by a number of stakeholders, both within the city and outside, such as the Copaconk Chamber of Commerce, as they work to establishing a medical center there, and the Halliburton Highlands Healthcare. We've provided insight and guidance around physician recruitment. So our recruits for the 2018-2019 year, Dr. Jill Keynes replaced Dr. Masturi at the Kawartha North Family Health Team in Fenelon Falls. Dr. Satvar Sahans joined the Omimi Medical Center in July this year. Dr. Gauguin started in September last year, and his wife, Dr. Ralph, has been doing a mix of family practice and obstetrics since January 2019. So our recruitment needs at this point, for Fenelon Falls, we need between 2 to 3, Lindsay 5.5 and 6.5. I know you can't split a doctor, but I'll explain that. Woodville 1 to 2, and Kirkfield 1 to 2. So I know there's a big number up there, 28,000. I'll get to how we've arrived at that. So there's important numbers to keep in mind. So the city of Kawartha Lakes has a population of about 75,000. So roughly 60% have either a family physician within the city of Kawartha Lakes. So that leaves about 40% that either are not rostered or have a physician that is practicing outside the city. So the translation is 47,000 residents have a family doc, while 28,000 do not. And we can expect those numbers to increase as the city grows, unless we recruit physicians who can take on new patients, not simply replace retiring or moving physicians. So by comparison, Peterborough County has a population of about 143,000. Pardon me while I breathe for a second. And that's about double our own population. Their numbers are different. They've got about 83% are enrolled with a family physician within that region. And that leaves about 17% or 24,000 who either have to travel or don't have a family physician at all. As a prior physician recruiter, I can say that living in a larger area probably has a lot to do with that number. Pardon me, I won't go past that just yet. So as I stated in this slide, we have current vacancies of between 9.5 and 13.5 physicians. So we project approximately 10 of those physicians will be, or 10 physicians will be eligible to retire within the next 2 to 5 years. Obviously, we can't say who or when, but basically, in some of those cases, we will need 2 physicians to replace 1. And the rationale or explanation for that is a couple of points. Older doctors typically carry larger practices, about double what the norm is. This generation of physicians wants a mix of clinic work, hospital work, surgical assist, anesthetist work, together with a work-life balance. That's something that my generation of physicians had a real struggle doing. And a significant portion of new physicians are women. So again, they've got the challenges of balancing work-life, home-life responsibilities. So what are we doing to recruit? First of all, I just want to give you a little refresher. So medical school is 4 years. And 3rd and 4th year students in medical schools are called clerks. So once they complete medical school and they've gone on to their chosen specialty, they are then called a resident. And family medicine residency is a 2-year program. So medical schools each hold job fairs where recruiters from all over the country, not just Ontario, are vying for physicians. Data shows that 80% of residents who undertake training in a community will practice there. So our Residents Weekend is an ideal opportunity to engage with potential recruits. Rural Education Days provide the first hands-on contact for first-year medical students, something they won't get in their actual education until the 2nd year. So these future physicians never forget their first opportunity to cast, to suture, intubate, and they also don't forget the location that gave them that opportunity. So following up on all these activities leads to one-on-one site visits, which Cindy Snyder, who is our full-time recruiter, very aptly looks after. So the Medical Learner Program is another piece to what we do. And I should say right at the beginning, from a purely economic standpoint, the impact of recruiting a physician is substantial, as is evidenced by this slide. So we're working closely with the University of Toronto to develop a residency program. So the first piece of that goal is the establishment of a core learning family medicine opportunity for clerks, in this case, third-year medical students. So first 2 medical clerks arrived this month, and we have 2 more coming in the spring of 2020. Thanks in great part to the work and guidance of Dr. Sheila May Young as lead physician, our dedicated local preceptors, and the work of this committee. So early exposure to our community, allows us to be the standard of comparison to other communities. So again, this residency program development. So I'm following up on the previous slide where I explained how all that works. Now that we've started with the University of Toronto accepting clerks, that is the first stage to now developing a residency program. So this training provides or prepares future family physicians in both urban and rural settings, and they also spend about 8 months in a setting like ours out of their 24-month program. So this benefits not only them, but it benefits the community because it brings enthusiasm, fresh knowledge, and skills. And again, I know I'm repeating myself, but keep that number in mind. 80% of residents who come and do their residency practice here will stay in the community. That's a huge amount. So we have our retention programs. The first bullet indicates some of our efforts, but the next point that I wanted to talk about was our continuing professional development. So first of all, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario dictates that all physicians must earn and report 250 credits in a 5-year cycle. Half can be certified, half can either be non-certified or certified. So thanks to the city's recent funding, we're about to present our first training workshop, which is certified through the Ontario College of Family Physicians, to our local docs on November 14th, and the subject for this one was chosen by them on mood disorders. So the benefit of not having to travel to a big city like Toronto for their training, the extra expense, the time away from busy practices, with this course, we are going to be providing them with an opportunity to earn up to 21 certified credits. So that's almost a whole year's worth of their requirements. A huge bonus for them to be able to do that here in the city. So this results, so the results as a retention initiative will be several years in the making. However, we consider this to be the icing on the cake, not the cake itself. So the cake, as you will, would be the city. So we've got beautiful lands and lakes, diverse practice opportunities, affordable housing, welcoming community members, and its proximity to Toronto. Because again, they want to have the ability to connect with their medical school, like University of Toronto, get access to their research or libraries, but raise their children in a smaller community that is more welcoming and, well, I think it's one of the best communities I've ever lived in, so we'll leave it at that. So the benefits to the city with our partnership, as you can see, we have recruited 37 family docs since we started in 2003. So that's a little over 2 physicians a year. Now, I should indicate that it takes between 12 and 18 months to recruit a physician. So by no means is our work just floating along in status quo. We are always working towards trying to get more physicians here. So our funding coming from the City of Kawartha Lakes. We have actually not asked for any increase, so we are trying to be a good fiscal partner with the city. We do have other funding available to us through the Ross Memorial Hospital, so operational funds are received from them, as well as technical support, phone, internet, meeting spaces, etc. We've also received in-kind support from companies like Homestead Oxygen, RBC, Gary's Garden Gallery, and the Grand so far this year. And this fall, our marketing committee launched another campaign for sponsorship, and I can say that we've been successful so far in getting a sponsorship from the Fenham Falls Canadian Tire Store. So lastly, we've got some questions for you. I wouldn't want you to pipe in and answer anything yet, but what we will be doing is contacting the councillors in the new year about face-to-face dates with the board, because we think it's important for you to provide insight to us, direction perhaps, feedback, personal stories that you would have received from your constituents. And thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. We get a motion to receive, please. We'll see if there's any questions. Councillor Yohan Elmsley, any questions for the deputants? I think you've covered a fair bit there. Seeing none, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you for coming today, and thank you for the great, important work that you guys do. It's appreciated. Okay, last but not least is item 5.8, Cultural Centre Committee Working Group. Susan Taylor is the chair, and Bev Jeeves, welcome. Just get you to put that microphone on. Yep, just push it. You probably turned it off. Yeah, there you go.
Well, it never hurts to say thank you twice. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity, for Bev and I to, as members of the Cultural Centre Committee Working Group, to present this report with a budget consideration for you. It is our responsibility to create legacies that will take the next generation to a level we can only imagine, and planning is critical to the success of every facet of our life. Cultural planning offers an opportunity for communities to create a roadmap unique to their needs, aspirations, and strengths. By planning strategically, our local government and our cultural groups can work together to integrate arts and culture more fully into our community. And as the Mayor has said on occasion, the best is yet to come.
This resolution defines the objectives of the Cultural Centre Committee Working Group over the past 6 months. These objectives formed a cohesive group of arts, culture, and heritage groups, community members, along with municipal staff, with consideration for each group's needs and a role in a cultural centre moving forward. A Cultural Centre Committee Working Group is in place. Councillors Seymour Fagan and Richardson are an integral part of the CCC Working Group. We have unanimously agreed on presenting today a decision unit in the 2020 budget towards the Cultural Centre's feasibility study. The CCC Working Group, in consultation with City of Kawartha Lakes staff, will propose to you today a plan for the oversight of the feasibility study. The 2019 Cultural Master Plan did play a large role in our decisions and determination of how future cultural centres fit the visions and the strategies for Kawartha Lakes cultural sector growth.
I would ask that you please review this list up now and on the screen and be impressed. I know that I am, and as chair of the Cultural Centre Committee Working Group, my sincere appreciation goes out to all the individuals on this list for their time, energy, and commitment to the increased economic well-being of our community.
The Cultural Centre Committee Working Group explored many aspects of a feasibility study process, including consideration as to who might be chosen to conduct a feasibility study, and looked at models that address and understand the City of Kawartha Lake's vast size. Feasibility studies test the viability of a project concept by a number of different measures and provide objective analysis on a variety of areas such as the following: assessing a proposed model for a cultural center hub, follow up on city core services review for a proposed site, recommend capital budget and operating budget, review potential funding sources, recommend potential governance models, and provide further communication with the community and engagement.
Research conducted for the 2020-2030 Cultural Master Plan included meetings with the boards of directors from all 12 Kawartha Lakes not-for-profit cultural organizations. All organizations had an opportunity to consider potential cultural models. They understood that while no model for cultural facilities and cultural program operations has yet been determined, their input as well as potential consideration by the municipality in terms of its long-term assessment management plans would determine any outcomes. This is important because 7 out of 10 cultural organizations operate out of city-owned buildings. Responses from community stakeholders reveal wide support for a new cultural center model, recognizing that collection, storage, and existing infrastructure is inadequate, and that existing venues are not sufficient to attract visitors year-round or to provide a foundation for creative economy and cultural tourism growth. The preferred model is a hub-and-spoke model with a central hub or collection storage facility functioning as a shared resource that all outlying hubs, museums, or cultural venues could utilize for collection, storage, and care, with space in the central hub allocated for each to create mini exhibits that showcase what's going on in outlying museums and venues. Each outlying hub would be an existing cultural facility that functions as a multi-purpose cultural space with its own unique focus and identity, but also providing space for local cultural activities, workshops, or classes. The spokes represent programming and operation connections that enable coordination and the important sharing of resources.
So how do we make it happen? It's important to note that Kawartha Lake's cultural facilities need to meet the needs of a painter, an artist, a musician, an actor, archives and artifacts, conserving and protecting, the theater, the fine work of arts. Working to meet the needs of all of our municipal cultural and heritage members, the CCC Working Group unanimously agreed to recommend the following to the Council: to endorse a multiple hub model for future Kawartha Lakes cultural facilities, commit to matching funds for the feasibility study by endorsing a $50,000 commitment from the city to match the Kawartha Lakes Arts Council private donation of $50,000. Endorse the positioning of the future Kawartha Lakes Cultural Facilities Initiative as a partnership between the city and the Cultural Center Committee. That there be a 50-50 partnership in ongoing planning and oversight of the feasibility study. That Council endorse the establishment of a Cultural Center Steering Committee. And lastly, for Council to endorse the provision of city staff technical support as required to the Cultural Center Steering Committee.
How will the feasibility study be managed? By building further on the partnership between the city and the Cultural Center Steering Committee, a committee comprised of 50-50 representation between city and community would manage the feasibility study. Terms of reference would be referenced by the terms of reference would be drafted by the steering committee with in-kind support from city staff available to the steering committee to assist and manage the feasibility study.
So why do we need your support? Because in 2014, Ontario's cultural sector contributed over 300,000 jobs, as well as $27.7 billion in direct economic endpoint. That's 4.1% of the province's GDP. And this also would represent 45% of the total cultural GDP in Canada. In 2016, visitors here in Kawartha Lakes at cultural tourist designation spent over $1.8 million and over $6 million in retail product here in the Kawartha Lakes.
So what are the next steps? We're asking for a decision unit in budget deliberations of a $50,000 request with a memo to be drafted by city staff. Secondly, terms of reference for steering committee to be drafted, members selected. Then we would be looking at a request for proposal issued by the steering committee in around January 2020. A consultant firm could then be chosen by the steering committee in February 2020, with a feasibility study underway by March to June 2020. We want to take this time to thank you for your time to hear us out and to consider this request. Thank you.
Thank you. It was an awesome presentation. Well done. Get a motion to receive and refer to the 2020 budget process. Councillor Richardson and Seymour Fagan. Any questions for the... Now, your budget, next step, decision unit in budget deliberations. That previous motion you referenced has already assured that that is already in our budget deliberations as a decision unit. Okay, up to 100,000. That was already passed previously by Councillor Elmsley, so that's already in our budget process. So we'll just refer this to the budget when we get there, and then we'll deal with the decision units at that time. Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any further questions, Councillor Riley?
Just a quick question on the 50,000. Are you asking for 50,000? Because I thought I saw the request, but it's up to 100. Is there two specifically different numbers?
The original said up to $100,000, and the group came here today to ask for $50,000 to match the $50,000, and therefore create a partnership between the city and the working group.
So really the ask is 50,000 in the decision. Okay, thank you.
To match the 50,000 they received
That's
from that
correct.
community. Yeah,
That's
perfect.
correct.
And if I, through you, your mayor, if I could just speak further to that, to Councillor O'Reilly, I have to thank Councillor Pat Dunn. He invited me to sit on the round table that Councillor Doug Elmsley was coordinating for the roads. And I gained significant insights into the challenges that you have with your municipal budget. And taking that into consideration, there was significant conversation around the working group table that we would rather find a level playing ground where we could continue a partnership with the city on this initiative moving forward. And if it meant coming here and asking for 50,000 and matching that, we were more than happy to do that.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. So what partnerships are all about.
That's right.
Any other questions? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the deputies. Just a couple of questions. Would the whole idea include the old jail next to us would be encompassed into like a whole central facility because of the issues that we have with the storage of the artifacts there? That's the whole idea, is to centralize everything into one building?
We don't want to take away from museums, and individuals like the old jail would still exist, but the problems that they have with storage and their collection and somebody looking after conservation, in a new cultural center, there would be that. And they would have access to their collections always.
Yeah, and I think to further what Bev has said, there's all kinds of scenarios. That's why a feasibility study needs to be in place to determine the feasibility study that determines what is best for the needs of our community.
Thanks. And just one final question. You'll probably look into like big corporate sponsors. I'm giving an example like the Royal Ontario Museum, like the Rogers, like that keeps that place going. I was there a couple of years ago. Would you be looking into corporate sponsors to help partner with?
The steering committee, that would be one of the objectives for the steering committee, yes.
Any further questions? We have a motion to receive and forward. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you very much for coming today and hanging out with us all day.
No problem.
I know you brought a few friends with you, so we appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
always a pleasure.
Have a great day. Okay, we'll move, we'll just finish this off. I don't think there's too much more here. So item 6.1 is the amended agenda report that we added. It was sent to you this morning or yesterday. There is a copy in your folder if you didn't get a chance to read it. I'll maybe ask Director of Corporate Services, this was just missed. The bylaw's already been passed for this. This should have been on the council meeting, so we need to get it done to catch up with the bylaw to get the financing in place. So unless there's any concerns, I don't know if there's any questions or concerns that anybody needs anything, the director can answer a question. Other than that, if I can get a motion as printed. Councillor Yeo and Dunn, no questions, all in favor? That's passed, thank you. And then we've got the correspondence. I don't know how you feel. I don't think we need to go through the meat. Is there any questions on the Otonabee proposed budget? Halliburton, Kawartha Pine Ridge, OPP. Yep, go ahead, Councillor Yeo.
Yeah, just on the health unit, I know it's asking for up to 10%, but I imagine that's because of the cutbacks the province dealt them, mainly?
I would assume so, yeah. They've received the same letter the rest of our agencies aboard have received to tell them they'll be funded at the zero from last year. But they've, our new chair of the health unit can perhaps answer that further than I can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the letter was received and taken seriously. What has happened is that there are programs that are mandated by the province that were 100% funded by the province. They since they moved to change the funding model from 75-25 to 70-30 with the municipality paying the 30, we were already contributing 29%, so going to 30% is rather a minor deal. But what they did with the 100% funding that they were doing of those programs was mandate that the programs must exist and that they were only going to fund them at 70%, meaning that 30% would have to come from the municipality. So when they crunched all the numbers and looked at it, they couldn't provide the service that they're mandated to do with the amount of money they had. So they're looking at economies and what they can do, but they aren't going to get them done in time for the 2020 budget, and therefore the letter came out asking that they would need up to a 10% increase in their funding. I hope that explains it.
Councillor Dunn, question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chair. Do they have any programs that they provide that are not government mandated?
They currently have one program, which is, I believe, dental care for adults. And it is not a mandated program, but it's an important program. But the dollar value is quite small. I think overall it's about $75,000. And they are looking at each and every program and how they can make economies in everything they do. As an example, they used to run inoculations for flu vaccine. But now that drugstores can do it and other people can do it, they've gotten out of that business. So they no longer run vaccination programs. They do supply the vaccine to those programs, but they no longer run clinics to give the injections.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only issue is the other organizations have held the line, and at some level we're going to lose credibility if we don't push harder, that's all.
Mr. Mayor, I could go into more detail if you would like to go into a closed session.
No, I don't think that necessary at this point. Our budget process that went forward, our operating budget is based on 0% as per council direction for all these boards and agencies. So that's what's coming forward in our budget, and we'll have to go from there. But that's as per the council direction. So is that the only question for the health unit? You're good? OPP? Halliburton Housing? OPP? Go ahead.
Just a question on whether, I know Chief Mitchell said that if we were to ask the province to have the OPP assume doing the super jail, I'm wondering, would it be cheaper for the OPP to do it, or is it cheaper for Kawartha Lakes? Is there a difference in their charge rate?
Well, it's going to be, yeah, and I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think as Chief Mitchell said, and I raised this with him the day after I got the notice, that they're working with the province through our minister, through the, the government, the different police forces to try to get this reversed. If it doesn't, we'll look at all the other options, but our OPP billing is based on sort of a calls per service on a 2-year 2018 for 2020. So, if we would have to go through that process if we chose to explore that, but I think for now we just need to let them do their work and see if we can get those funding cuts reversed and continue on. There are some mitigating factors the local police could do as well. We're getting way ahead of where we need to be at this point, so that's all right. Are you good? Go ahead.
I was just going to comment that as a general rule of thumb, the OPP is more expensive than a municipal force. As a general rule of thumb, the advantage we may gain is if the calls were down, then the cost would be down because it's all call for service. So, but it's certainly, if the calls go up, then of course the cost goes up. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 different scenarios to deal with it if it comes to that, and like I said, I think we're getting ahead of it. Even if the OPP do it, it's still going to go on the tax base. Like the hard part about it is it's 5 to 7% of the residents of the jail are City of Kawartha Lakes residents. The rest are provincial. So why should our taxpayers have to foot that bill for a provincial facility that is 95% of what they do is housing provincial people? So I think that's a better argument to take right now than trying to figure out how we're going to pay for it. Okay on the OPP? Anything on Halliburton Housing Corporation? A letter? Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority? Okay, so we can just get a motion to receive the correspondence for input into the 2020 budget process, please. Councillor Yeo and Ashmore, all in favor? That's passed. Confirming bylaw for today's proceedings, Councillor Vail. Richardson, thank you. All in favor? That's passed. Director budget books will be in their mailboxes when?
Budget book should be in your mailbox on Friday.
Okay, we'll send out a note when they're ready so that if they're around town, they can come and pick them up if they wish to. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Yeo, Councillor Vail, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you.